Welcome to this edition of our podcast. I'm Bill Rambo, one of the founding partners of What's Next for Financial Advisors, and I'll be your host today. And I am particularly excited for today's chat because it features a young man who I have known, I think, since the very first days of his entry into the industry, and that would be my good friend, John Froberg, CFP. John, how are you today?
I'm great, Bill. How are you?
I'm well, and I'm excited. Let me take a minute because I want you to remind me of when we first met, but it was pretty early in your career in the business.
Yeah, I hadn't graduated college yet when we met.
Okay. All
That's,
right.
that's for sure.
All right. But first, as always, I need to mention, introduce, and thank the man behind the curtain, all powerful, knowing all Oz, Mr. Brandon Kirst, who is our extraordinary producer and director. Brandon, thank you for your efforts as always. So, John, share with our audience some of your background and remind me and let them know when we actually did start to connect and do some stuff together.
So yeah, I basically ended up a finance major in college by process of elimination. I liked English in high school and hated English in college and liked math, but wasn't smart enough to be a statistician. Ended up a finance major and between junior and senior year started checking out internships. I met our mutual friend Dave Elowich, who I still work very closely with today and who's been a financial advisor for I think over a decade at the time and much longer than that now. Um, that's kind of how I got into the industry. I was fortunate to land a job at a fantastic firm out of Westchester called Siller and Cohen, and spent many years there before starting my own practice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You and I met through Dave Elowich again before I even graduated, and I think he paid your bills when we first started working together.
Yes, he did. Wasn't much of a bill. I want to go back to one thing you said, though. I think there are a lot of people that are very happy that you couldn't handle the math to become a statistician or whatever that was you were going to be, because there are a lot of folks that benefit from your help, guidance as a financial professional. So, John, when I think of you, I think of you standing up in front of and standing apart, standing out from the crowd. And there are a number of things that you have done in comparatively speaking, what is a short history in this business that have differentiated you from others. And I find that exciting, fascinating, and really enjoyable because it's sometimes it turns my head around a little bit and you help me to kind of widen my visual field and understanding. So you're an exceptional planner. You're a smart marketer. You're a public speaker, and you do some other things in your business that differentiate. So I want to focus on those today, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And we'll take them one at a time. So your approach to planning, tell us about that, how you conduct it, how you charge for it. Give us an overview, please, and I'll help point out some things that are a little different.
Yeah, so I guess I'll try to skip the obvious stuff that a lot of folks in the financial planning world kind of do and already know. And I'll just jump right to one of the challenges. So I think that one of the biggest challenges with planning is to make it feel like an ongoing process. So we know from the advisor's chair that things change every year, that things that may seem simple take quite a bit of thought and time and attention and consistency to actually execute right year over year over year. And clients who have worked with us for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years start to get a really good feel for that too. But prospects or clients that maybe have only worked with us for 3 months or 6 months may not quite feel that just yet. And so I think what happens a lot is a prospective client comes into a financial advisor's office and sits down and they have their kind of intro meeting, whatever that meeting looks like, depending on who the advisor is and who the prospect is. And at the end of that meeting, it's clear that there's, 2 things, 4 things, 6 things that need to be addressed, or need to be fixed. And it's relatively easy to get buy-in from that prospect sitting in your office that we're going to fix those things. But I think it can sometimes feel like, okay, you're going to fix me and then I'll be fixed and then I'm done. And it doesn't necessarily feel like not only are you going to fix me, get me organized, get everything coordinated and tied together, but you're also going to help me stay on track and actually improve the track. What we can do in year 2, year 3, year 4 might even be, exponentially better than what we can do in year 1 as we work together longer. So
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So one just really kind of small practical change I've made that's actually made a big difference and helped with that a lot is just charging planning fees monthly instead of annually. And it's the same fee. And I don't penalize people because I'm getting less money up front and it takes me 12 months to get paid. It's the same fee that it would be. But just that feeling of the check coming out of the account or the EFT coming out of the account every month instead of once at the beginning, it doesn't feel so much like a project. It feels like hiring a coach or an advisor or a partner that's going to help you along the way for hopefully, your whole life.
And that's very much a part of the conversation you have with people. You'd really prefer not to do one-offs. You want those long-term relationships, right?
Yeah. I mean, any professional in any industry, you want the most leverage on your time and expertise that you can possibly get. So if I'm going to spend an hour with someone, I want them to get as much value out of that hour as they possibly can. It's just a fact that you're getting more value out of hour 10 than you are out of hour 1. Hour 1, we got to spend the most of the time just getting to know each other, which is great. Not to say that's not enjoyable or a good conversation, but you're not going to get as much view. You're not going to get as much knowledge. You're not going to get as much progress towards your objectives in that first meeting as we might in our first review meeting of the 5th year working together. Because the 5th year working together, I already know what your objectives are. I know what you care about. You know how I work a little bit, how our firm works, and we can just get right into getting things done. I think the longer average relationship you have with a client, the higher your leverage is on your time, and more importantly, the higher the leverage is on their time.
I wouldn't know. I usually only in and
Well,
out.
we've worked together for a number of years now, Bill.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Just real quick, as you were talking, a couple things come to mind. I mean, you're seeking, and we've had a lot of back and forth about this over the last couple of years. You're seeking to provide a great service, ongoing service, but for a fair price. And we've had situations where I've said, other people are doing this, and you're like, well, basically I'm not other people, and I can't justify that here, so I'm not going to try and justify it with clients. So you're not inexpensive, you're not cheap in what you charge, but you're very, very fair. And that mindset has pervaded the last couple of years as you've really started to do more planning and gone to more of a subscription model with it.
Yeah, you want the fee to be the right fee. Even from the client's perspective, there is such a thing as paying too little. I have a colleague who has a great line about this, which is, do you want to be your financial advisor's least profitable client? Like, of course not. You don't want to be any advisor's least profitable client. You want to pay a fair price and receive a service or receive an amount of value that's some multiple of that price you pay. So I would go back again to that idea of leverage. The thing that is good for both the advisor and the client is leverage. How can we get the most value to the client out of the least expense from the advisor or the advisor firm? Because that's how everyone benefits. And so again, our planning fees, our monthly planning fees, you mentioned they're not tremendously high. They're not tremendously high on purpose. If we tried to run our practice only on planning fees and not charge on anything else or not make revenue any other way, we would have to charge a lot more. There's a difference between charging nothing and charging something. And so we want the something to be the right amount where there's buy-in, there's value, there's a mutually profitable, beneficial relationship, but we also want to structure the firm in such a way that, we're not charging just like hundreds of thousands of dollars for meeting with folks.
Well, and we've had those conversations, and you've always wanted to be more than fair with folks in terms of what you charge for the value you provide, which is immense. So we'll have that conversation again, I'm sure, at some point. One other thing that also came to mind is that while you're not a statistician, you keep more spreadsheets than anybody I know. And Brandon has been on meetings with us where we're looking at the average of this versus the projection of that versus, and you tend to really, which once again is another thing that differentiates you from other people. You treat this business like a business and you know your numbers. And if you don't know a number, you'll figure out a way to find out what that number is, and then you'll focus on that as well. What led you to, is that just your personality, or what led you to be so detailed about things, about the number?
I'd say mild anxiety. So I probably spend more time in those spreadsheets and numbers than I should. I probably overdo it a little bit. But basically, the reason for all of that is when I sit down on Monday morning, for sake of the analogy, and I look out at the week, I want to know exactly what I have to do to accomplish whatever my objectives are. So there are 10-year objectives, 3-year objectives, 1-year objectives, 90-day objectives. And all of that feeds into like, okay, what do I have to get done this week? And what those spreadsheets, what all those numbers give me is a reality check. Because numbers are pretty objective. You can massage them, you can frame them, but at the end of the day, they're going to tell you if the plan is going to work or not. They're going to tell you if the price you're charging is going to work or not. So the point of all of those things is actually to free me up so that when I sit down to do the stuff that we all want to be doing, which is meeting with clients and meeting with prospects and meeting with networking partners and all that stuff, meeting with colleagues in the industry, doing things like this, I know exactly how many of them I have to do. I know how often I have to do them. I know basically how they're going to go or how many of them are going to go one way or another way. And so it just frees me up to be really focused on what's in front of me, not worrying about, not making these little micro decisions like every hour of the day.
And program down to how many first conversations or approach talks, as you refer to them, that you need to do in the course of a year, which then breaks out over the month, and you track all that as well, right?
Sure, but you could go way beyond that, right? How many networking things do I have to do to get that number of approach talks?
Well, I don't know that many people would go way beyond it. I'm talking to the guy who does, but it works. I mean, you have a firm control of what needs to be done. You do it, and you're hitting the numbers plus some in many cases.
Yeah, I'm sure anyone who's, and it doesn't matter if you're in this field, but anybody who's done anything entrepreneurial or has an entrepreneurial mindset, to me, the worst feeling is sitting in front of your computer going, I'm willing to work as hard as I need to work, but I don't know what to do. That's what the spreadsheets, what all this stuff prevents. I know exactly what I have to do. It's just a matter of doing enough of it.
I'm Bill Rambo, co-founder and partner at What's Next for Financial Advisors. Thank you for taking the time to watch our podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment, letting us know what topics you'd like us to discuss in future podcasts. Also, check us out on LinkedIn and our website, where you'll find other podcasts, videos, and insights into what we do for financial advisors. Excellent. And you do. And you'll continue to find ways to do more and to do better with what you do. All right. So another way that you differentiate, that you stand out from the crowd in the business, is that you've actually committed to working with some specific markets. And the idea of target marketing is not foreign to business or the financial services industry. It's just there are not a lot of advisors who seem to really focus on specific markets. I will tell you that, just as an aside, a number of people we've had on this podcast and will in the future, they do get involved with target marketing. I think the common thread might be Brandon. But anyway, we'll move on. So who do you work with? Why? And how's that going?
Sure. So I when I first started focusing on a target market, it was screenwriters. And then it became screenwriters, producers, and performing artists. And now I'm actually partnering with a couple other folks within Ironbridge, and we're running a sports and entertainment practice. So it touches
Ironbridge being Ironbridge Wealth Counsel.
Ironbridge Wealth Counsel is the ensemble practice that I run my book through. So yeah, we work on everything from, NIL football players to screenwriters to producers to I have some Broadway folks. So it's a lot of fun. I guess I would start by saying this. I think one of the big misnomers with target markets is that if you have a target market, that means those are the only people you work with. And that could not be further from the truth. I actually argue that having a target market not only makes me better at and makes it easier to get clients in that target market, it actually makes it easier to get clients outside the target market too, just because it gives me a message that sounds different. So I don't have to, when I'm networking or meeting someone new, say all the things that everyone else is saying. I can just talk about, well, we work with screenwriters, producers, and performing artists. And the amount of times I get an email from somebody that's like, hey, my friend really needs help. They're not in entertainment, but they're a doctor. Can you help them? I wish this weren't true, but I get that email more often than I get, hey, my friend's a great screenwriter. Can you talk to them? And a lot of times we can help that doctor. Just because the target market is one thing doesn't mean those are the only people you can help.
And I mean, it's not been that long that you've been working in this market, 1.5 years, 2, that you've really fully committed to it?
Yeah, a little over 2 now.
Okay. So, John, that's another thing that comes to mind in working with the great people at Ironbridge Wealth Counsel, which is the group you're affiliated with through Osaic as your broker dealer. They promote very strongly, and you are a strong devotee, adherent to the concept of joint work. And so you'll be doing work from a more senior, helping with a plan, a case with more senior advisors, but you'll also be handing work to other advisors who are perhaps not as proficient in some areas, but can help take things off your plate. Talk about that mindset and how does that actually evidence itself in real life?
Yeah, I guess the little quip would be, we don't think it's good enough for us to be experts for our clients. We want to be experts in our clients. So it's not enough to just be an expert at planning. We want to be an expert at that particular client. We want to have seen that situation, and every situation is a little different, but we want to have seen something similar a bunch of times before. And so I think when you take that to heart, you actually put that into practice. It requires a ton of joint work because it's hard to get new clients. Prospecting, marketing, all that stuff is hard. So it's not feasible, it's not practical to say, I'm only ever going to work with screenwriters. And if I come across somebody who's not a screenwriter, I'm just going to walk away from that business. But it gets a little easier if I come across, let's say, a complicated family business where they're thinking about succession planning. I may stay involved in that case, but I'm not going to do that work by myself. But I know I have colleagues down the hall who specialize in doing that work every single day. Vice versa, I might come across something that I could handle, but somebody else does every day and they could handle it faster, which means they can charge the client less, they can get to the same place in less meetings, so not just saving the client time, but saving the client money, and they can do it in a way that's profitable and scalable and allows them to grow their practice. So yeah, I think joint work should definitely go both ways. Sometimes some cases require 2, 3, 4 advisors if they're really complicated. Other cases just need to get rerouted to the right specialist.
Excellent. And so as a result, though, that means sharing revenue on cases and planning fees and all that other type of stuff. But in your mindset, it's an investment. It's not an expense because it helps. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, so the mild version of this is what most people do, which is they kind of like figure out splits and they hope it works. The medium version of this is, as you start doing it in volume, it's very easy to track and say, well, I'm actually not losing any revenue or paying any expense because I'm getting brought in on stuff that I wouldn't have got as often as I'm giving it away. So I'm doing the same amount of work, I'm doing the same amount of revenue, but I'm doing it more efficiently because I'm focusing it on very specific people that I'm the best at working with. So that's the medium version because you have to do a certain amount of volume. So you have to take a little bit of a leap of faith before there's enough cases to see that play out. So first time I refer a case to Bill, it's not to say one for one. It's not to say I'm going to get a case back from Bill. But if I'm referring cases to Bill and Steve and Jim and George over time, it might be that I tend to refer business to Bill and Bill doesn't really refer business to me, but I get a lot of referrals from George and I tend not to refer. So when you start to do this in bigger groups, everybody ends up doing the same amount of business. Everybody has the same amount of hours in the day, but you get to focus on the business you're good at. That's medium. The spicy version,
Spicy.
mild, medium, spicy.
The spicy version level involve Brandon at all? Because you left him out of the medium version. So let's get
I did. Brandon didn't come to mind as I search my brain for names to use. But the spicy version is a true ensemble practice, which is Ironbridge is starting to adopt and will continue to adopt. So an ensemble practice says, I'll use Brandon this time. Bill, Brandon, and John are advisors. We start out, it's John clients, Bill's clients, and Brandon's clients, and maybe we refer stuff to each other. If we move to a true ensemble, it's no longer John's clients, Bill's clients, or Brandon's clients. It's the firm's clients. All of those clients pay revenue to the firm, not to John, to Bill, or Brandon. And then John, Bill, and Brandon get to take a salary out of the firm. There may be some bonus because you do want to incentivize people to bring in business. So there's probably some bonus that's tied to what you source, what you bring in. And most importantly, that business can now have an enterprise value that allows John and Brandon and Bill to take equity distributions out of the business. So if you look across not just the financial world, but the business world in general, most of the compensation for really high paid people comes in the form of equity. It's not in terms of salary. I don't really believe that a financial advisor or really anybody should be making, let's say, $1 million salary. If you do $1 million of revenue and after you pay your expenses and whatever, you're making $750,000. It's not that that's a $750,000 salary. There's industry benchmarks that say what your salary should be, and it's maybe $200,000 or $300,000, something like that. The other $400,000 or $500,000 is equity distribution. It's enterprise value that you've built in that book of business that's now paying you a dividend every quarter or every year. And so when you structure it as an ensemble, it takes a little bit of you have to take a little bit of the egos out of it and not say I'm $1 million producer or I'm a $5 million producer or whatever it is. But it allows you to build something with a little bit of a longer term vision in mind. And again, by taking those egos away, now I get to focus on just the work that I'm really good at. And that may even mean there may be partners, there's paths to equity that have nothing to do with prospecting or bringing in clients. Like that's another thing I think we as an industry could just do a lot better is, there's nothing that says that you have to be a salesperson or you have to be driving business or you have to create revenue to have equity in a firm. So there's all different ways you can create value and you can drive value to a firm. You can help clients, you can help other advisors, but that requires the spicy version of joint work.
An organization where everybody is aligned around the client's needs and works for the benefit of the client is a model that I've helped to build in the past, would love to see more of it. And you folks at you and the folks at Ironbridge are doing a really good job. We'll talk about one of those other ways perhaps to build equity in a little bit. But first, when I think of John Froberg, Brandon, standing out from the crowd, I also think of him standing in front of crowds. John is one who has not been afraid to get out there and do some public speaking as part of his marketing efforts, and indeed just in basically establishing his identity in the industry. So, John, you've done public speaking for target markets that you've worked with that you mentioned before, and you've also just in the last couple of months appeared at two industry conferences, the Osaic Connect Ed conference and the Kitces Value Summit. So talk about the role public speaking has not just in developing clientele, but also in that other part of developing your professional persona. Please.
Well, first of all, I have to respectfully correct you. You said I haven't been afraid to do public speaking. I've totally been afraid to do it. I've just done it anyway.
Well, okay, but you don't look, okay, forget it. Move on.
Well, I'm glad I don't look afraid. Yeah, the Osaic Connect Ed conference was really fun because we got to do that in person. Don't get to see enough people in person, have enough conversations in person these days. So the more of that I get the chance to do, the better.
What was the topic?
The topic there was target markets and how to build them. I'm a pretty strong believer that everyone should have a target market or at least be working towards a target market. And so it was fun to kind of share. I got to share a little bit of how I built mine, what worked, what really didn't work, what were some of the misnomers I ran across where I thought it was really going to be like this and actually it wasn't. And that was a blast to do live and in person.
And I believe you'll go back and do it again if given the opportunity.
I hope so, yeah, if they'll have me.
Okay, well, I'm sure they will. And the Kitces Value Summit?
Yeah, excuse me. Kitces does a really cool thing. I hadn't been to this conference before, but it's very Zoom enabled. This would be a hard one to do in person. But rather than kind of prepare a talk, Kitces has you come up with a tool, something you use in client meetings and prospect meetings for marketing, whatever it is, and literally screen share the tool and almost go through it. So one guy, I didn't do this, but one guy actually had Michael be the prospect and went through a prospect meeting and how he uses these particular tools, how he structures his prospect meetings, how he gets buy-in, and he shared his whole service offering and pricing schedule and things he shared with the client. So I shared a simple tool I have. It's our financial planning implementation schedule. It's very basic. It has, the description. It has the list of all the things we want to get done, next action dates for when we need to look at them next. It has target completion dates, and it has who's responsible, whether that's us, the client, or something we're working on together. It's a very simple tool, but I just kind of walk through how I use that. This goes back to something we were talking about at the very beginning, which is planning is an ongoing process. So how many times do we deliver the plan? There's 10 great recommendations. 2 of them get done in the first month, and then 8 of them sit on ice and never get looked at again. Well, with this implementation schedule, again, it's a simple tool. I can't guarantee that everything's going to get done. In fact, it's rare. I have a few clients where they literally do everything, but most of the time, not every single recommendation ever gets implemented. But nothing fades away into the mist. If something doesn't get done at a certain point, we're making a decision, hey, we decided not to do this. Nothing just gets kind of forgotten about. So that was fun to share. That was almost more of like a podcast kind of format like this, where I'm just going through screen share live and answering questions. And yeah.
Okay. And you've done some virtual public speaking for groups in your target market, right?
Yeah, I've spoken at the Writers Guild, the Writers Guild out of New York. So there's a Writers Guild East and a Writers Guild West. I've done the East in 2023, 2024, and it's scheduled for March of 2025. So hopefully we'll keep doing that one every year. I did the Producers Guild too in November of 2023 as part of a panel with a accountant and another advisor. So yeah, those have been really fun too.
Okay. And they've actually yielded some prospects
Yeah.
as a result.
Yeah.
Imagine that, having fun doing what you're doing and getting benefit and value out of it. It's amazing. I personally can't even wrap my head around it. So, all right. You talked before about other ways to build equity in a firm that didn't necessarily have to do with selling.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to another way you're different and you're standing out from the crowd. Tell us about your role as director of planning.
Sure.
At Ironbridge Wealth Counsel.
Sure. So Ironbridge, obviously the ensemble practice means different advisors doing different things. We also need to build really good tools to support all those advisors. Client services, operations, that's one piece. Marketing, training, business plans, that's another piece. We want to have a really strong planning department that's staffed with experts at different areas, and also that is very efficient, that allows, again, the whole goal here is for people to figure out what they're good at and what they like to do, and then just do that all day. So I may just want to meet with clients all day. Bill may want to just run plans all day. Or I'm only using 2 people for this example, and you're the one on the screen. So
Brandon, I'm trying to work in. It's tough.
So the planning department can do a couple of things. First of all, a pool of technical expertise available to advisors, leverage so that advisors can spend more time meeting with clients, less time, writing the plans, looking things up, dealing with the software, technical glitches and things like that. And so obviously that planning department needs to have somebody sort of overseeing it and managing it. And so I've been asked to do that as part of Ironbridge and sort of run that planning department as we build it out.
So forgive me, but in our history together, I seem to be a little more willing and excited about mentioning great things you do and talking about them than you do. But this financial planning, being the director of financial planning at Ironbridge Wealth Counsel, an organization that really does focus on planning more than a lot of others in the financial services industry, to be tapped to build out that department, those systems and processes at still a relatively young age in the business, experience-wise and age-wise, I think that's pretty cool. We can move right past it if you wish, though, John.
Yeah, we can move right past it. I don't know that I have a good answer to that.
You could just say thank you, and I feel honored, and we'll move on. I don't know.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that, Bill. I try to just, like I said, focus on Monday on what needs to get done by Friday, but But appreciate you saying that.
Well, I've said this to you before. We as humans allow our successes, no matter how large or small, to pass way too quickly and without enough fanfare. So when you do something great, I'm going to tell people about it. By the way, as you know, I've never been accused personally of not recognizing successes. Anyway, let's move on. Going forward, how do you continue to stand out from the crowd? What's in your future? What are you going to focus on that's going to help you to continue to differentiate what you do, how you do it, and reap the benefit that provides?
I've mentioned leverage twice. I
Mhm.
think it's most of what we've talked about today are different ways to create leverage. Joint work creates leverage by allowing you to focus on working with the clients that you're best at and most enjoy working with. Target markets allow you to create leverage by, well, in two ways. First of all, when you've seen client number 10, you've seen 9 like them already. That's leverage. Number two, there's an actual leverage you build in your expertise that compounds as well. Your expertise deepens more and more every year the longer you continue to focus on working with particular folks. What am I going to do going forward? I just keep doing this stuff. Maybe I'll come up with a few other ideas to kind of speed up and grow that leverage, but target markets, joint work, building enterprise value in Ironbridge, all those things are kind of where I'm
continuing
focused.
to track the numbers. That will be part of it.
Yeah, definitely continuing to track the numbers. And hopefully the leverage shows up in the numbers. It usually does over time.
Any other last thoughts you wanted to share? Anything we didn't cover or anything you'd like to close with?
No, this has been great. I hope somebody gets something valuable out of it. I hope people reach out if you see this and strongly disagree with anything I said. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you agree with something I've said, I'd love to hear from you too. So I hope people get in touch because I love talking with other advisors and other non-advisors, accountants, attorneys, whoever it is. And I think we can all work together and just grow, make things more valuable for clients every year.
Speaking, brings one more thing to mind about public speaking. You attended a couple of our peer-to-peer calls a while back. Haven't seen you lately, so let's see if we can get you back on. But you talked about some of your approach to planning and and the monthly subscription, and there were a lot of people on that call who were really impressed. So you do a great job of sharing things with other advisors, as these other examples have demonstrated. And so I just want to thank you sincerely, my friend, for the opportunity to chat through some of this stuff today, the continuing the opportunity to work with you. So I get a front row seat to watch how you continue to grow and excel in the business. So thanks for your time today, John. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. This was really fun. And thanks for everything over the last, however many years it's been now. Looking forward to a lot more.
Thank you. Thank you. And many thanks to the man behind the curtain, Oz himself, Brandon Kirst. There'll definitely be some stuff to clean up in this recording today, some edits, but we did have some fun. So Brandon, you're the man to do it. Thank you as always for your efforts. Once again, thanks to our guest, John Froberg, CFP of Ironbridge Wealth Counsel. We'll have contact information and all that other stuff throughout and at the end of the podcast. So I am Bill Rambo, one of the founding partners for What's Next for Financial Advisors, reminding you that it's probably always a good idea to take a few minutes and sit still and think about what's next. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.